Yes, well, I'm Kevin Kelly. Next birthday I'll be 92 years old, and I've been married this year for 70 years, and I'm now a full-time carer for my wife, who I've left at home today. Um, and we're the parents of four children. Our oldest child was born in 1956, and quite a perfect baby. And when she was 10 months old, she got meningitis, and it wiped out half a brain. But she survived, and when she was 6 years old, and we were wanting to take her to school, we discovered there was no schools that she could go to because of a disability, and it was a great shock. But we were introduced to the Tamworth District Handicapped Children's School, which had only been going for about 3 years at that time, and so we got her started there. Now it's interesting to know about the how that school started, because when back in 1958, in the Tamworth district there was no facilities at all for intellectually disabled people. And there were a family living up in the top end of town, and they had a disabled little girl the same age as our Rose, and she was severely handicapped with heart problems as well. And but she had a grandmother there, and the grandmother was in the last stages of life, and she used to sit on the front veranda in the sun or the shade, whichever was appropriate, and play with the little girl, and she'd nurse her, and then she'd read books to her. And over a period of about 18 months or 2 years, she had this little girl, Belinda, was able to read. And the parents were pretty excited about this, because they had never thought that it would be possible for her to read. And the husband, John was involved with the community here in Tamworth, and in the Rotary Club, etc. And so they called a special, they called a meeting in the community somewhere here, and they formed the Tamworth District Handicapped Children's Association, and they recruited two ladies who were already grandmothers with no teacher training, and they set up a school in the Tamworth Showground in a shed there. And these two grandmothers, who didn't know anything about teaching officially, set to with the first of these children in the school. And by the time they'd been there for 18 months, they had 18 children that they were teaching. And these were children who had no hope of ever reading or writing or expressing themselves, or no hope really in life. And during that next 18 months from when that started, the committee got organised, and got the community organised, and they raised the funds and built the school that we now have up there in Johnson Street. And so they were able to move into that with these two grandmother teachers and a teacher's aide. And of course, back then there was no money for any of this from the governments. There was absolutely nothing. So to pay the teachers, we would have an annual door knock around Tamworth, and that meant that we got the service clubs all organised, the churches and so on, and one Saturday of the year we'd go around and we'd knock on every door in Tamworth, and collect the 20 cents or the 10 shilling note or the pound note and so on. And we had, at the end of the day, we had enough money that we could pay the teachers for 12 months. And that's how we existed. And that school grew and over the years, and we had, and eventually those grandmothers, as you could realise when you put another 10 years onto them, they're sort of past being able to do that. So and in this time, there were other schools cropping up in the north of the state, and the education department started to give us some money towards teaching, but they insisted on the teachers being trained. We initially sent these grandmothers off for 6 months for training, and they came back, but then it all got intense, so we then got trained teachers to do it, and it all became, we operated from where there was no what's the word, long service leave or holidays, or there was no superannuation responsibilities and that, and then it moved on, and when the government got involved, we had all those issues. So it was quite initially we kept our meeting notes were written up by the secretary in an exercise book, and that's how it all started. And our daughter came and started there in 1962, and she was able to grow with the organisation as it grew. We soon had children who needed to leave school, and so we set up what we called a sheltered workshop, but was actually only an activity training centre where they came into this big room and they sat down and tied labels, strings on labels for the abattoir, and so all day, and we couldn't pay them because there was no money much in that, so it was sort of like a minding system really when I look back, but we thought it was a great work that they were doing, and the need arose then too, as you can see, that a lot of these clients that were coming there, they needed somewhere to live. The ones that lived in town with their parents were okay, but the ones who were out of town, it was very difficult. So we set to it and we decided on building a hostel. And if you drive up Tribe Street in Tamworth now, you'll see what they now call it Simpson House, I think. We built it and we called it Simpson Lodge. And we had it for 16 boys and 16 girls there, and we had house parents living there, and they did the cooking and looked after and supervised them. And they were it was built round a quadrangle, and there was the girls on one side and the boys on the other, and it all worked very well. We didn't, and we were quite very excited and proud of what we'd done. But along came in 1986, you can do your calculations and see how long we've been going. 1986, the federal government passed a bill called the Disability Service Act of 1986, and in that act they branded Simpson Lodge as an institution that had to be disbanded under the act if we were going to get funding for what we were doing. We were by this time getting funding for that and some of the other things we were doing. But and so we had to disband that, and that created what I should have mentioned, that the way that the organisation ran back then, we were an executive committee of the Challenge Foundation of New South Wales, and in the state there were 65 branches of Challenge Foundation, and we were one. There was another one at Gunnedah, Narrabri, Moree, Armidale, and Corindai, and that was Glen Innes, and each one elected a director who could go to the board meeting and talk. And so when this act came out, a lot of the committees around the whole state, they saw it as too hard to do, and they decided to keep doing what they were doing. But we realised that if we did that, the money would dry up and we wouldn't be able to provide the service that was necessary. So we adopted the Act or embraced the Act and said we would get on with that. And at the time it caused quite a bit of controversy in the city because it meant selling Simpson Lodge, and people, especially quite a few parents, were very much against us putting people out in mixed sexes out into group homes, and they said it wouldn't work and it wasn't right and it wasn't safe for the girls, etc. And so we had to battle with that. And I'm pleased to say that the committee at the time went ahead and we did just that. And I'm pleased to be able to report that we had very little trouble along the lines of what parents were afraid of. We had little issues from time to time, but we were able to keep that under control. I'm very thankful for the vision that people had in that early committee, and the enthusiasm that they had to go ahead, because you really couldn't see where you were going. You had a goal, and I think it's important for people to have a vision and work towards that vision, because if there's no vision, well then it tells King Solomon said years ago, where there is no vision, the people perish. And I've often thought of that word perish, that meant that you died, but anything that perishes doesn't actually die or go out of existence. It's still there. If you have an old tyre that's perished, it's still there, but it won't hold air, so it's useless, isn't it? And so it's important not to perish and go down, give up. And so the committee has always been able to be encouraged and by the need for what needs to be done, encouraged enough to go ahead and seek ways to do it. And that's brought us now in the state of New South Wales, where we're not just providing services in Tamworth, we're providing services all over the state and infringing into Victoria and into Queensland. And so we've gone from a little committee in Tamworth writing the minutes in an exercise book to a company that's I think about the third largest community service organisation in the state, and it's all come about from that seed that was originally nurtured in with that grandmother and her granddaughter on the veranda up in Jennison Street back in 1957 or 8. There was a great sense of community too with the service clubs, and the Apex and the Lions Club and the Rotary clubs and the churches all sort of supported us and made that work that much easier. And we had parents on the committees too, and so that got that involvement. And over the years, we've on the committee. When I joined the committee, I was 28 years old, and I wasn't the youngest one. And over the years, the parents have dropped out of our committee work. We've fortunately had a couple of men on our board here up until recent times that were parents. But we've now got a group of almost retired men forming up the board now. But I'd want to encourage new staff that are coming onto this, into our organisation, to take seriously and try and catch a vision, an individual vision for each one of you, so that you've got something to work towards, and know that how dependent intellectually disabled people are. We're here to help them manage their lives, really, not to dominate, but to help them manage their lives. If you or I were put into a jumbo jet today and with about 500 passengers in the back and said to take off, we would be very handicapped, wouldn't we? And that's how but if we had a good pilot sitting alongside of us and told us what to do, we could do the job. And that's what this is about, that if as new staff and if you can envisage that you're there to reach out and to help and to guide and to encourage and to show that you care, that will be a great benefit for you, or will be very rewarding. I'm just trusting that just as in the case of those foundational people there, that they were very strong Christians, and they sought the Lord and trusted Him to guide them along, because we're all walking in a path that we don't know where the path leads, and when we look back now, we can sort of see how we've been guided in so many ways and taken around the pitfalls, and whilst we have, everything hasn't been a victory. Where we've tripped over and fallen down, we've been able to be picked up and carried over that and re-established. And when we went out from the sheltered workshops, for instance, we looked and experimented with different things that could be done. And one of the things, there was a lady there, and she was very keen about teaching the girls to sew on sewing machine. So we got sewing machines, and she trained them to sew straight lines on material for a start, and then they were able to make garments and all sorts of things, and that was sort of some valuable training those particular girls got. And we got, but then it wasn't profitable, so we had to sort of look at other things. But so we're always, when I look back now, where there were so many different stages that we've been through, and it's great now that we're funded by the taxpayers in quite a good way, but still we've got to manage the money and manage what we do. And right now, I understand we're in a little bit of a tight place where expenditure's more than caught up to income, and we've got to watch that, and so we've got to have respect for the ones in our administration here, and realise help them to go through and find a way through. So that's my hope, is that the executive people will not lose heart and won't lose their way as they add up the sums. Well, that was a big milestone when we had to embrace that Disability Services Act. But since then, the Department of Children's Services, which we commonly call DOCS, I think, they decided to hand over the responsibility of foster care in the state. It was a state government issue, and we saw an opportunity there to get involved with that, and so we registered for an interest and got some training for some staff, and we've been involved with foster care now for what must be nearly 10 years, I think, or over 10 years. And the thing, it's interesting with all these things, that you set up a structure, but then after a while you find out that the government alters the goalposts, and they're seeking that we should be working to get these children back with their real parents where possible, and particularly with Aboriginal children. And so when you think about foster care, children are there because of usually parents unable to look after them, or domestic violence, or some other family breakdowns and so on. So it's very difficult to pick up the pieces, and it'd be a bit like trying to rebuild the Palestine at the present time, isn't it? But anyhow, we're doing that, but so the goalposts changed from 10 years ago to where it is now, and we don't know what where that'll lead that service in the just ahead. But so that's just an interesting thing. Where our staff coming with us, you'll see that how those goalposts change. We don't change them, but circumstances and the government change them, and we've got to adapt. I've been being on the board here, been nearly overcome by all the governance things that we've had to comply with, and structures that we've had to put into place, and they get it all. They're always getting rather difficult. The board members are finding that, but as I sit back and look at it, I can see now that once you put these things into place, then they're structures then that you're able to comply with government funding and government demands and so on, and you protect yourself from from circumstances in the field. Back about 1990 approximately, when the Challenge Foundation It self-destructed itself, self-destruction it was. Then the Tamworth committee had the opportunity to decide what to do, and we met and decided to form a company, which at the time we called it Challenge Tamworth, and we formed the company, which is the foundation of our existing company today. We changed the name a couple of times since, but we formed that company and became self-managing. We're no longer had to comply with the Challenge Foundation, and so and I never dreamed we took over the Gunnedah branch at the same time and the Muswellbrook branch, and then we gradually expanded into Narrabri and Moree, and then it just got bigger as it went, and I've been amazed at how that's occurred, and to think that from just 1990, which is what 34 years ago, how the organisation's grown in that time. I became chairman of the branch in Tamworth in 1982. The president before me was the father of that little girl that I talked about, and he was chairman for 24 years, I think it was, and he and I often sat down and talked because I lived on a farm 100 k's away. I never thought of ever being chairman, but we had a lot of talks about who we were going to get to be the chairman when John stepped down. But he was playing golf over on the golf course one Saturday afternoon and took a swing at the ball and fell over dead at the age of 63. And so when our committee met up in the Treasurer's lounge room, and we talked about what we were going to do, and I put forward the idea that Ted Wilkinson would be should be chairman. He was not a parent, but he'd been on our committee for a good while. Anyhow, he was declined the opportunity, and so I was more or less fell into the job, and I thought, I might be able to do this for a little while, and so 29 years later, I got cancer myself in the side of the face and had a big operation and radiation and stuff, and it gave me the opportunity to step down then. But since then, which that's 2011, it's that 13 years, our budget's gone, annual budget of spending and income, it's gone from 20 million to about 110 million. So that's been, in money wise, it's been a big growth, but that's when the growth has taken place around the state. And so you can imagine when you're dealing with that amount, what an important role it is for the board and the senior staff particularly to manage an organisation like this. It's not a billy cart race, is it? And so we're very dependent on loyal staff, well trained and dedicated to the organisation, and so I would encourage everyone to remember that when you come into this organisation, you're a tooth on a big cog, and if you don't do your bit when when you engage with the driver, well, you don't help the organisation.